什么味道？
咸的。
鲜的。里面是什么？是肉吗？
没有肉，
没有肉。什么买的最好？都很好。I'm currently in Taipei, and I'm here to challenge myself to see if I can learn fluent Chinese in just 30 days. Now, I've always been bad at languages. I nearly failed Spanish in high school, and I still can't speak a lick of it. But I do have an ace up my sleeve. Since high school, I've spent the last 17 years running high-growth startups. So I wanted to really push myself and see if I can use the skills gained from running high-growth startups to learn the world's hardest language in just 30 days. Now, at this point, I need to be very honest with you. I don't know if this is going to work, but I really need it to. Since selling my business, I've been feeling a bit lost, like the spark that once fueled my life has faded. For over a decade, learning Chinese has been a dream that I've postponed, admitting defeat year after year. But this is my chance for redemption. To me, this isn't just about learning a language. It's about rediscovering my passion for life. However, the Foreign Services Institute says it takes 2,200 hours to learn Chinese. So even if I somehow studied for 24 hours a day for 30 days straight, I'm still less than a third of the way there. But this is where I'm hoping my lessons from being a hypergrowth CEO come into play. First thing I always do whenever I'm taking on a big challenge is break it down into small, manageable, specific chunks and then build an action plan to get there. So my goal is to learn fluent Chinese in 30 days, which means I need to learn 1,200 words to pass the HSK4, the official Chinese language fluency test. Thanks to natural immersion and a bit of self-study, I already know around 200 words, so that means I need to learn an additional 1,000 words in 30 days, or roughly 30 words per day. When I look at this goal, I'm starting to think, hey, this isn't so bad. To accomplish that, I found a very cool software that uses spaced repetition, which is a scientific way to learn things with an algorithm that maximizes perfect learning. But as I'm signing up for it, I get hit with some bad news. There are multiple warnings during the onboarding and as you adjust the settings that basically scream at you, do not try to learn more than 5 words per day. The brain can only handle so much information, and I need to learn 30 words, so the doubt is already settling in. But fueled by unhealthy amounts of caffeine and undeterred optimism, I decide to build my action plan. So my outcome is simple: pass the HSK4 test in 30 days. My key result is to learn 1,200 Mandarin words. My action plan is to learn 30 words per day using my spaced repetition software. That's 1 hour in the morning, then I'll supplement that with an hour of private tutoring every day in person. Sounds simple enough, right? Oh, how wrong I was. Just a few days into my challenge, and it became clear I had a huge problem. This is not going well. I got 17 out of 36 words, and of those I remembered 6, got 11 for a retention rate of 35%. They say I'm supposed to have a retention rate of close to 77-80% if it's going well, and this is not going well. You see, I was technically learning words, but I'd forget them almost as soon as I got done with my flashcards. I had barely started my challenge, and I already felt like I was heading to another year of admitting defeat on this dream, closing the chapter on Chinese yet again. And so I dug deep, reflecting on my time as a CEO and how I dealt with problems back then. Whenever I would encounter a challenge, my first response was to ask, how do the world's best people do this? Can I just copy them? I remembered seeing viral videos of these world champion memory guys that could memorize an entire deck of cards in just seconds. It turns out to do this, they use what's called a memory palace, where you essentially build an imaginary location in your mind filled with different objects, rooms, and actors. It works because our brains are hardwired to remember spatial and visual information more effectively. So you can build a memory palace to trick your brain into remembering anything from languages to complex subjects. And that got me thinking, could this be the missing key in my language learning journey after all these years? And lo and behold, some fellow language nerds, Mandarin Blueprint, were also using this concept to learn Mandarin. And with a bit of inspiration from them, I started implementing memory palaces for any character I had a hard time memorizing. So, for example, my story for the character Gan, which means dry, is Gilbert, my father-in-law, throwing a razor at a cross. The razor slices off the top of the cross and dry sand spills out. It's a little clunky at first, but you get used to making these little scenes out of each character quite quickly. And with that, my vocab actually started to click, and I had a new action plan. So my outcome's the same, pass the HSK4 test in 30 days. My key result, unchanged, 1,200 Mandarin words. But now I'm going to be learning 30 words per day on my spaced repetition software and using the memory palace technique for any words that I'm having a hard time remembering. And that bumps my time from 1 to 2 hours every morning in my flashcard software. And that'll pair with my hour of daily tutoring. And just in time, my local Chinese school also paired me with my new teacher, Gu Lao Shi, so I could start impressing her with my newfound language skills. 昨天很累, which mostly consisted of her laughing at me. 今天更累. After a week of studying, I started noticing a new problem. I was starting to remember some of the words, but I still couldn't actually use them. I sounded like one of those ridiculous dubbed movies spouting off gibberish. So I decided to bring in another one of my lessons from my time as a CEO and find some mentors. You can shortcut years of learning by just getting insights from people who have already achieved what you want to achieve. So the first guy that came to mind was actually the CEO of Hack Chinese, the spaced repetition software that I'd been using every morning. I knew he had mastered Chinese from scratch, and when I signed up, the onboarding flow told me I could schedule a call with their CEO if I wanted. I decided to see if that offer was real, and to my delight, the next day I was on a call with their CEO and sharing my plan with him, which he thought was crazy.
You want to get to the end of HSK4 by the end of the next 25 days? That's the goal?
That's the goal, yeah. But then he gave me some crazy insights that would completely revamp my study schedule.
Satisfaction, that's what generates motivation for me, and that comes from having conversations in Mandarin. So if you find a tutor and you work with this tutor for a couple hours a day, or even a couple tutors for a couple hours a day, by the end of 25 days, you may find yourself able to chat in Chinese for 2 to 3 hours. Also, get a few different tutors, see what you like better, see which one you feel better at the end.
Then I did something else, which is something I always do whenever I meet a new mentor. I asked him if he knew anyone else I should talk to. This is one of the most powerful things I do because the fastest way to build an amazing network of mentors is to just get in touch with one and then ask for other mentors. You rapidly expand your network and soon you have all the mentorship you need. And what do you know? He also said yes. And soon I was talking with another foreigner who had learned Chinese to a very high level from scratch. He agreed with what Daniel had already said, but then he gave me another huge tip, the power of constant immersion.
When lockdown hit, I had more time. I would just kind of spend all of my spare time starting to immerse in different Chinese content. I did improve quite a lot in terms of my vocabulary acquisition and ability to understand other people, especially when they were speaking to me. Through having loads of hours of input, the one thing that you get really good at is just understanding natural speed conversation.
Now, with both of their insights, I had to revise my plan. A couple hours a day just wasn't going to cut it. So I came up with a new action plan. My outcome, key result, and flashcard software all remained the same, but my private tutoring was about to change drastically. Rather than doing 1 hour per day, I would start every morning with 2 hours of private tutoring online using an online tutor company called italki that matches you with native speakers. And then in the afternoon, I would do 2 hours of private tutoring in class with Gu Lao Shi. And then all of my free time would be spent in full immersion. And that would be listening to podcasts, listening to music, or watching Chinese with dual subtitles. And with my new plan, I immediately took action. I called my local tutoring company, and the next day started my 2 hours of private tutoring every afternoon.
好，我们看剧就可以吃了。好，谢谢你，不客气。
I just got done with 2 hours of Chinese classes, and I am already late to my next one. Let's get to class.
用印象 make a sentence.
我第一次印象对你是很好的老师。
好， 但是说的不对，但是谢谢。
All right, so that was super weird, but actually I'm feeling more energized after my class than when I started. So I don't know what that means for us, but we're going to keep pushing and see if we can get to this thing. At this point, Chinese started to literally take over my life. It reminded me a lot of building my startup. People ask me all the time, what's the most important thing to become successful? They're looking for some hack, some silver bullet to success. But the answer is obsession. This obsession that consumes your mind every waking moment. And from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, Chinese was on my mind. In fact, many nights I'd just stay awake, tossing and turning because I couldn't stop thinking about Chinese. This is never something that just happens. It is a result of deliberate effort where you design your entire life around a goal. You live, breathe, own it every moment of your day. And as I owned it, my days became madness. I was running from class to class, out of breath, barely time to think or breathe. And you know what? I loved it. It made me feel alive again, to be pushing myself and striving for a goal. If I'm being honest, since retiring 2 years ago, I'd miss this feeling. All right, it's day 15, which means we're halfway through this challenge, but things are not going super well. I just asked my teacher, based on my progress, what do you think? And this was her response. So the highlights here are, it's a bit difficult to study hard and pass. Maybe you are very lucky and pass, haha. But I don't want luck to be my strategy. I think we can actually do this, but we need to be even more strategic. Which brings me to another critical key to success. A goal and action plan aren't enough. There's another critical step, which is to constantly measure your progress to know if you're on track or need to adjust the plan. This feedback loop is actually where all the magic happens. And at this moment, my progress felt way off track. But I decided to do an HSK4 practice test. All right, we're at supertest.com. They have this slick little online HSK test, so let's see how we do.
一，在睡觉，在等车了。
我没有提醒他，这条路上的车很多。
It honestly, all this sounds like gibberish. I'm gonna try the reading section and see if we do better. I genuinely can't understand it. I'm gonna end the test early and try an HSK 3 and just see what the heck is going on. It turns out understanding 50% of the words doesn't actually mean you can get a 50% on the test. It actually means you get a 0. There are just too many words in every sentence that you don't understand, and you end up completely lost. I mean, try to read this paragraph with 50% of the words changed to gibberish. See? I was really screwed. But failure isn't permanent. It's just feedback that what you're doing isn't enough to get you to your desired goals. So I decided to go out, buy a milk tea with my Chinese, and at least pick my bruised ego up off the floor a bit.
可以买一杯奶茶。
可以啊，你要冰的热的？
热的。
那你要鲜奶的还是奶精？
什么鲜奶
？fresh milk 那个。
加奶。左右。
milk powder。
对，可以milk powder。
小心烫哦。
谢谢你。Bye bye. It worked. Well, mostly.
And then, with some milk tea in hand, I set out to make adjustments to my plan. It was very clear that even though I was already doing 6 to 8 hours a day, that just wasn't going to cut it. I needed to step it up to another level. And at this point, my brain had already adapted to this 6 to 8 hours a day of study, so I said, let's go crazy and push it to 10 to 12 hours a day of active study plus full immersion. Sometimes when you want something bad enough, being clever only gets you so far, and the only way to get the result you want is just to massively increase your output. Lately, I've been addicted to these ear colds, but right now, we need to study Chinese. So we're gonna hop on with our tutor. We're gonna chat a little bit. I think my Chinese is actually coming along pretty well, but we'll see in live interaction. You can be the judge.
Hi，早上好。
早上好。
为什么你开始的时候不告诉我你不可以在我的 Chapter 4写字？
没关系。我开始的时候是 Yale. At this point, though, I was really running on fumes. It was my last 2 weeks in Taipei, and instead of going out enjoying myself with friends, I was locked in a room studying like crazy or running from class to class. And this is another key lesson, which is sacrifice. All growth in your life will come from sacrificing other things you want to do to prioritize the thing you're trying to achieve. And it wasn't just that I was running on fumes, I was missing dinner with friends, I was missing my Muay Thai classes, I was missing exploring cool parts of Taipei. There's a quote by Jimmy Carr, "Everyone is jealous of what you've got, no one is jealous of how you got it." And that's how I felt in that moment. But when those feelings creep in, it's extremely important to revisit your why and purpose. I knew learning Chinese would unlock so much of the world, that my life would forever be better for having done it, and I would prove to myself that I could achieve anything I put my mind to. I also knew succeeding at this specific challenge was an opportunity to rewrite my own narrative. My narrative that says I'm a bad student who can't learn things, and by doing this, I can also inspire thousands of others to dream bigger. Now, revisiting these things didn't change my life overnight. I was still tired, I was still exhausted, but it gave me just enough to keep going. And then something miraculous started to happen. I started to hit my stride. My brain and body fully adopted the schedule of 12 hours a day of studying, and it was like I was on autopilot. I'd wake up, study my words, private tutoring, study again, go to class, come home, study, immerse, rinse, wash, repeat. My calendar was so full, I didn't have time to think about what was next, I didn't have time to question it. It all just happened in a caffeine-fueled blur. But I was making real progress. I was starting to understand my homework. I was starting to understand my Chinese show. I even wrote this paragraph in Chinese, like crazy. I could hardly believe it looking at it. And as the final days approached, my wife implored me to take the real HSK4 exam a day early, just in case. All right, here we go. We're gonna take the HSK4 test and see if we are actually fluent. It started out a bit rocky, then I hit my groove, and I started answering question after question. But then I started running out of time. In a rush, I finished as much of the test as I could, only to find out we failed. We're very close. You need a 180 to pass, but I only got a 165. Then in the reading, you can see the last section. I ran out of time. I passed every other section. I just ran out of time. I think if I had more time, I could pass, but as of now, it's a fail. So close. So immediately after the test, I threw myself into studying tactics and trying to improve my reading speed. And then the next day, I took it again, feeling much more confident. All right, round 2, taking the HSK4 test. I feel way better this time. Moment of truth. Let me just review. Oh, no.
Oh no.
No. And at this point, I thought about just scrapping the whole video. I mean, if I don't pass this test, I failed my challenge. What's the point? I was so devastated that I had failed once again, I actually just reached up and turned off the camera. But then I saw something really weird. Oh my gosh. Oh, you can come in. Oh my gosh, I actually passed. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I'm so proud of you.
I had actually passed the first test. It turns out the last 10 questions had to be manually graded by a test reviewer, and they hadn't been included in my score yet. And literally, while I was busy taking the second test, my final score from the first test was updated. And as it would later turn out, I ended up passing the second test as well, with an even better score. Waves of emotion passed over me as I realized I had actually done it. I can't believe we passed. I can't believe we actually passed. I had broken my own narrative and finally learned Chinese. But I still had one more test to pass. I needed to head to the local market and see if I could actually use my Chinese in real life and interact with the local aunties to buy some food. But before that, my Chinese teacher, Gu Laoshi, had mentioned that there was a very famous bread spot in Taipei. She told me she always wanted to try it, but that it was too far from her house. So right then, I knew exactly what I needed to do.
请问，我听说你有很有名的面包。
有名的面包，
对啊
这个酒酿桂圆，
这个是最有名的。
对，
对
酒酿桂圆，
对，
然后还有荔枝玫瑰，就是那一个，可是那个现在没有了，
现在没有，
要4、5点，对，
现在可以买这个，
可以，然后柜台可以帮你切。
OK， 谢谢你。觉得2小时。你好，你可以切。
可以，帮你切4块好吗？还6块。
对啊。
好，6块。谢谢你哦，稍等一下，谢谢。
And then, bread in hand, I went to my final Chinese class, giving the bread to my teacher, thanking her for all of her hard work and her
对啊，
strength.
今天。
surprise， 谢谢。
对，我想谢谢你教我中文，我觉得很进步。
真的？
对啊。
客气。
And then with that, I headed off to the local market to test my newly mastered Chinese with the local aunties.
请问这个叫什么名字？
炒仔骨。
炒仔肚，可以现在吃？
可以。
什么味道？
这是咸的。
咸的。
对。
可以买1份。多少钱？谢谢。我们成功了。我想尝尝。他说是一点咸的。
坏蛋。
请问什么买的最好？都很好。好，我买我想买这个，多少钱
？40，
好。
对我的。
快点。谢谢。很好吃，可是有一点干，所以现在我渴。虽然今天有几个问题，我真的很开心。我的中文不完美，但我希望这个视频可以激励你实现你的梦想。谢谢你。